he started organizing things so that we could start to go down. But the way we go down was the steepest route to get off the mountain. So we're going down, and about 15 minutes into our descent, I get this huge chest pain, and I sit down.
You're listening to Building Dallas by Arrington Roofing.
So I'm sitting there on this rock, and this gentleman walks by, and he stops and he says, "Is everything okay?" And he's an American. And, we explained to him that I'm not feeling very well. And he's like, well, I'm a cardiologist from California. He's like, let me check him out. So out of everybody to meet, I meet this guy from California. And so he checks my vitals, and it turns out that my vitals, were all over the place. And he says, you need to get back to base camp and call for the emergency helicopter.
From sunrise commutes to stormy nights, from tough builds to big ideas, we're shaping the future of North Texas, one story at a time. Welcome to Building Dallas.
From the quiet strength of stone to the clean lines of glass, every detail tells a story. In Dallas, where tradition meets modern growth, one designer has been redefining what it means to live with intention. Renee Garcia, founding principal of RGDB, doesn't just build houses. He creates inspired homes for modern visionaries. With a philosophy he calls mindful modern living, Rene blends architecture, construction, and interiors into one seamless experience, crafting spaces that are as timeless as they are effortless. Today on Building Dallas, we explore how Rene's journey from his roots in Mexico City to shaping some of the most beautiful residences in North Texas reveals not only what it takes to design great homes, but what it takes to build a great city. This is Chris Arrington, and welcome to Building Dallas. And we're welcoming today one of my neighbors and good friends and colleague, Renee Garcia.
Hello. What an introduction. Wow.
Well, yeah. I know introductions are kind of, I know if I'm introduced, I'm like, well, okay, thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me. This is awesome. Yeah,
good.
This
good.
is great.
Yeah, we're just going to have fun today. And it's been a joy getting to know Rene and Amber, his wife, who just lived down the street from us, and we've done some work with Rene.
That's right.
Put some roofs on his projects and continue to do so.
Yeah.
And so that's why we wanted to have him here today, and because I really enjoy Rene's philosophy. I think I'm going to find a little bit more about it building, and that I also have a degree in architecture, but didn't quite follow through and get licensed and go through all the rigors to get licensed and have worked in the field. So this is really going to be fun for me too.
It's great. I mean, you're down the street, so I get to see you around the neighborhood all the time anyway. So yeah, besides work. Yeah.
I'm kind of down the street, but I'm going to say this right now because this just fits in. Renee lives in Dallas and in Minnesota.
Yeah. So yes, back and forth because you have to find the perfect weather.
Tell us. Well, hey. He lives both places. He's just not snowbirding.
Yeah,
so, okay, Renee, why don't we start? Just tell us, because we already kind of alluded to it. You started in Mexico City.
Yes.
You're in Dallas. So, just give us a little background. Who's Renee?
So I was born in Mexico City, lived there as a child. And then my mother and I and father, we moved here to the United States. We started out in Irving, Texas, and lived there whenever I was younger, and then so that's where I grew up, was in Irving, and but yeah, it's been interesting to kind of. I still have family that still lives in Mexico City, so we still go there. My aunts and godparents and everybody's still there, and so it's great to be able to kind of understand both cultures and try and blend them in from, not only just background of myself, but also with kind of what we do, on daily life,
So why did the Metroplex? Why, why your dad?
Why? Well, we moved to Dallas. He was studying school, but also working for IBM. So he got a computer science degree,
okay.
And then
he worked at
IBM his whole life,
okay.
So and then my mom was here. So it's funny. We moved here on Halloween Day October 31st. And in Mexico City at that time, we didn't have Halloween. We didn't celebrate, people in Mexico City didn't celebrate Halloween.
Okay.
And my mom had always heard, oh, the United States is so dangerous. It's so dangerous. So we move here on Halloween Day. My dad's going to night school and working during the day. So my mom and I are at home, and then people come trick-or-treating at night. And one guy shows up at the door with like his eyeball falling out, and another guy with blood and everything. And
Welcome
my mom
to
just
Dallas.
freaked out. Yeah, and my mom was like, oh my God, they were so right. Dallas is so dangerous.
My God.
Yeah, but it was Halloween. So that was when we moved here. And I think I was like 4.5 years old whenever we moved here. And I didn't speak English when we moved here from Mexico. So I learned it by hanging out and playing with kids and school. And
Okay, and so then so you went school here. Did you meet Amber here? Amber's his wife.
So I went to school. So I grew up here in Dallas or in Irving. Went to school here, and then eventually in architecture school went to UTA and studied architecture, and that's where I met Amber, my wife, because Amber was also studying architecture. And I think
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Amber
Did
studied
she
architecture.
finish in architecture?
Yeah, so we both finished the degree in architecture, and then she got out of it and studied international business marketing and finance. And so she got out of it a lot, and then moved and worked at the UN for a little while and did completely different things. And now her passion is more, investing in organizations and people from a global perspective in a public health arena, things that are helping the community.
But was she involved in practice?
So we both went to school together. That's where we met. We were both in studio together, and I think we had like a total of 3 girls. So I mean, it was I had. Yeah, Amber was one
girls,
of them.
y'all need to get into architecture because the guys are lonely. Come on, help us out.
So we got so we met there, and then we eventually got married, and then we moved to Scottsdale, Arizona for a while because she was going to graduate school.
Okay.
I was working for BRW Architects at the time. My very first job was at the Vincent Group, which was an architecture firm that focuses on restaurant and retail design. Okay. And that's where I got most of my experience at my first job. And then BRW Architects was my second job. And then so we moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, where she was going to graduate school. And then we moved to Switzerland, Geneva for a while. She was going to another program for graduate school, so we moved there for a while. And then we came back to Dallas after that.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And so then when you came back to Dallas, is that when you started your practice, you worked for somebody else?
No, whenever we moved back to Dallas, I started I was always fascinated with branding design. So whenever I was at the architecture firm, I went to Tower Records one day, back whenever there was a tower. People bought records, that shows how old I am.
Yeah, and you've got album covers.
Exactly, and you flip through them. And so I was at Tower Records, and I came across this magazine, and it was called How, a design magazine. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it was all about branding and marketing. And I was like, well, this is interesting, and packaging design. And I thought this is really fascinating as far as design, taking design into another realm. And so I taught myself a little bit more about branding and the software that's Photoshop and Illustrator and all those things. And then I started understanding and learning more about branding and marketing. And so I started a branding design firm, and we did brand development and architecture for restaurants. Yeah.
But you were doing branding and architecture.
Yeah. So I wanted to combine those two worlds to where it was a designing an experience. Okay. So you're designing an experience, and the experience lied within packaging design, like for a restaurant, for example, it's about the architecture. Okay. And restaurants are so much fun to design because there's so many different experiences and different things that you want the consumer or the person visiting. There's the bar, there's private spaces, and they're all designed differently to give a different emotional feeling to it.
Yeah.
And so so that's something that I really loved, and I love designing restaurants because it was just so much fun because you have so many different
Always wanted to
materials
do that.
and different things. So we did that, and then I thought, well, there's a gap between this and the branding world, and about designing the logos and designing what the experience is, and the experience is everything from the menu design and the uniforms that the people wear, the finishes, the interior, the furnishings, the music that's played. Everything is an experience within a restaurant. And so that's what I kind of started doing within that. So whenever I worked at BRW Architects, the best thing that happened, it was an incredible place to work. I learned so much. And then the economy shifted in like 2001. And,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to hold on.
Uh-huh.
So you just said it was a really incredible place to work.
Yeah.
What made it that way? What was it about? What touched you?
Well, the thing that I loved about working at an organization like BRW was that they did a variety of different styles of projects. They did government work. They did restaurants. They did university work. They did so it was a large different sectors that they focused on.
Because a lot of architects find their niche, and
they stick to it. Yeah, and that's it. But
they
their
were really
practice.
broad.
They were broad. It was a larger organization, and so they had a variety of different specialties that they did. So it taught you a lot. And then in 2001, the economy shifted, and I was overseas, and so
That's when y'all were living in Switzerland.
Yeah, that's where we were living in Geneva, and so BRW lost one of their big accounts at the time they didn't lose it, but it was just one of those things where economy shifts, they're slowing down a little bit more. So I got laid off along with some other people, which whenever you get laid off, you're like, oh man, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
But in hindsight,
then you figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah, you need to figure out what you're going to do. But in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah, it was a blessing, because it pushed me to be able to start the branding firm, and it's called Lucid. And so we did this, and it was funny because whenever Amber, my wife, was in graduate school, one of her papers in entrepreneur class, she did a project, and it was over my branding firm. It was the branding firm. That was kind of the project that she.
Okay.
So there was some information that she had been working on with that to help us out, to get that started. So we did that, and then it caused us to start that whole practice. Did that for a number of years, and then in 2012, Amber and I decided to go for our 15th anniversary, and we went climbing Kilimanjaro. So we went, so it was like, okay, dream come true. We were like, okay, this is great.
That's hard. That's not a vacation. That's
work. It was a lot of work.
Man.
Yeah, it was a lot of work to train for it.
Did you get to the top?
No, and that's what happened. That whole
Renee,
moment,
that's like a thing.
Yeah. So that whole moment, that entire trip is what shifted everything in my life. Yeah, as far as to what I do right now. So whenever we were climbing in 2012, we were going up there. Had made it all the way. It takes 6 days to get up, the path that we were taking, and then it takes a day to get down, or a couple days to get down from the top, because you have to acclimate as you go up. So as we were going up, I think we got up to about 18,000 feet. That's as high as I got. And that night we were at camp, and I did not feel well. I started to get a lot of chest pains, and it was like one of those things where I didn't feel well. So I told Amber the next morning, I was like, I don't think I can continue. I think I need to start heading down. And it was so we talked to our guide. His name was Babu, and he was awesome. And he was helping us make to the top, and to get to the top. So we told him, and we said, I don't think I can make it. I think I can get down. And we were very upset that we weren't going to make it all the way to the top.
Yeah, you've got a lot of time invested already.
And so he said something that was very important. He says, mountain is mountain, life is life. He's like, the mountain's going to be here tomorrow, but life is uncertain. Yeah. He's like, so we need to get down. Okay, so we started to he started organizing things so that we could start to go down. But the way we go down was the steepest route to get off the mountain. So we're going down, and about 15 minutes into our descent, I get this huge chest pain, and I sit down. And at this point, we haven't seen any Americans the whole time that we've been there. It's been, foreigners and, people from Germany and all over the world, but no Americans. So I'm sitting there on this rock, and this gentleman walks by, and he stops and he says, "Is everything okay?" And he's an American. And, we explained to him that I'm not feeling very well. And he's like, well, I'm a cardiologist from California. He's like, let me check him out. So out of everybody to meet, I meet this guy from California. And so he checks my vitals, and it turns out that my vitals, were all over the place. And he says, you need to get back to base camp and call for the emergency helicopter. So we go back up to base camp, and we're sitting there, and then we try and get the helicopter, but because of the time of the day and everything, the helicopter's not coming because the clouds are starting to roll in and everything. So we sit there and we wait. And at this point, another gentleman comes up, and he's a guide, and he's got like 12 people, and he asked me to take a photograph. Because I'm fine as long as I'm not under exertion, I'm okay.
Okay.
And so I snap a picture, and then he says, "Are y'all heading? Are y'all heading down?" And I go, "Yeah, we're heading down." He's like, "You're not going to be able to head down." I said, "Well, we're waiting for the helicopter." He's like, "The helicopter's not coming." And I'm like, "How do you know? How do you know all this?" And he says he's climbed all 7 summits, Everest. He does expeditions there, and he takes guides on this. And he says the clouds are about to roll in. They're not going to be able to get the helicopter up. So he checks. He's an EMT out of Bishop, California.
Okay.
So he checks my vitals, and he's like, "We got to get you off the mountain right now." So he's trying to find oxygen, and the guides, there's no oxygen right now. So the Sherpas and the guides, they run all the way down the mountain, grab oxygen, come back up, and they give me the oxygen, and then we start as I'm starting to go down. So we're making our way off the mountain, and we're climbing all the way down, and we finally get off the mountain at like 2 a.m. And it's pitch black. Mm-hmm. We have our little lights, our torches.
The dark.
In the dark,
not fun.
And it's cold. There's at the very top it's cold, and then you're starting to shed layers as you start to get down to the jungle. Yeah. So we get down, and the emergency vehicle was going to be there to get us off, but it really wasn't an emergency vehicle. It was like the town bus is how I got into town. So so we get back. And they say, I can go see the doctor from Alaska who runs the orphanage, or I can go to the hospital. So I go talk to the doctor, and he checks me out, and my heart's still, weird. Everything's kind of discombobulated. And so he ends up giving me a consent to fly form, and then we change our plans, and then we try and come back to the States. I still don't know what's wrong at this point. So whenever we come back to the States, I didn't feel well. I went to see my doctor, and my doctor here in the States is in Dallas, and he said...
But you did the flight, okay?
Yeah, I did the flight, okay. And then whenever we came back, he said, you need to get to the ER. So I go back to the ER, and they find out that I have a pulmonary embolism. So I get checked out, so now I'm in the hospital for a while. And, it's one of those things where it causes you to really think about life, okay? Mm-hmm. And because the way things happen, I might have not woken up one morning if I never, things happen.
Yes.
So I end up thinking about things. We lived in Winnetka Heights, and that's where Amber and I live, and we had the kids. The historic district in Oak Cliff. Right. Lived there, and then I remember Amber and I got back, and I got out of the hospital, and we went out to dinner, and we said, let's sell the house. Let's do something different. And I said, yeah. I said, let's do that. And I said, and before this, a friend of mine had asked me. He said he had some friends that needed a house. They were doing a house, and they were looking for somebody to design their home. And I told my friend, I was like, I don't do residential. Yeah. I was like, that's not my thing. I do more commercial work, and residential is not my thing. He's like, why don't you try it? You may like it. So I did it, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. It was because whenever you're dealing with residential architecture, it's very personal. You're learning about people's lives in depth, and you get to know the family, and you get to know the children and the stories, and you're building something that is going to be a place that creates memories for this family, which is something that's very, very important in life.
Yep.
So I did this, and I really fell in love with it. And when my accident happened, I was like, I want to do that. I really enjoyed residential architecture and designing homes. I loved it.
Yeah.
And so whenever we decided, let's sell the house, let's kind of shift the life a little bit. Let's disrupt things. So we decided on Saturday. That Thursday, my wife Amber had to go to I can't remember. I can't remember where she went. I think she went to Switzerland for business or something, but she was overseas. And I sold the house while she was gone. Yeah. So somebody came to look at the house, and I called her when she landed, and I said, I think I sold the house. Yeah. And she's like, okay, well, great. So we sold the house.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. It was good.
Heart attack. You probably said, I sold the house, and remember, I have a heart problem. So don't get mad at me.
So we sold the house. Everything was great. And then at that point, we had nowhere to live, because we didn't buy a house. We didn't have another house. So we called it our gypsy summer. And so we put everything in a storage unit. The kids and us, we moved to France. We moved to Paris, and we lived there for the summer, and we went to the south of France. We went to Italy. It was just kind of our little nomad vacation for the summer, and it was awesome. And it was one of the best times ever, just be able to be there.
Let's see, we sold the house, honey. So let's move to France for a summer. I'm sure. Let's do that.
Yeah, so let's do that. So we end up, and before we left for Paris, we found the house that we have right here in Kessler Park. In Kessler Park. Okay. And it was a hoarder's home. It was just falling apart. But we loved the house.
I don't even remember it anymore, Renee. That's how, because all I do is I see it, because I drive by his house every day, and so I see it like it is fixed now. But yeah, you're right. It was nobody had lived there.
Well, it was. He had like 9.
Somebody was living there.
Somebody was living there, but they had hoarded animals and different things. And the realtor said, we wanted a project home, so we were like, okay. So we drove by during lunch one day, and Amber and I looked at it, and we was like, I think it has potential. I think it's a beautiful property.
It was a project.
Yeah, it was a project. For sure. So we were like, okay. So we ended up buying it before we left. And so we were designing the home while we were in Europe the whole time. So it was great to be able to. Sometimes and this, to this point now, like right now, I'm designing a home right now for clients, and I was just in Japan like 3 weeks ago, and I love being able to be somewhere else to be able to design, to kind of change. Yeah, it's just you're in a different environment. Yeah. You're a little bit more relaxed. It's a little bit different. You're able to just think about things a little bit differently than you can, here. So at that time of our lives, we were somewhere else in Europe. I'm designing the home, and we were trying to imagine, what the house would be. So we started the design. Okay, money wasn't like crazy. Okay, we didn't have like buckets of money to do this, so we had to be really smart about it. Yeah. And we had to.
Well, you didn't tear it down completely.
No, we kept a few
almost
walls.
did.
We almost did. Yeah. By the time it was done, we had torn down most all of it. Yeah. Because you start, and that's the thing. Whenever you're doing a renovation, like a train, I call them extreme transformations, because it's you start to find things
totally
behind walls.
Different. Yeah.
You see things. Okay, well, this is all rotted. This needs to come down. The floors. So there's a lot of experimental aspects that happen during that process.
Right.
So we designed it. And then we looked at it as, okay, this is a great idea. Let's do this. We're going to have our home, and banks wouldn't give us any money at that time, because it was, at that certain time, banks weren't lending money. And so we had to like bootstrap it and pay for it ourselves. And as we tried to find certain things, and then borrow a little bit here, and we try to make it. But finally, whenever we were, and we were probably so annoying to the neighborhood, because it took forever for us. We were like building the house, and then I remember
I think we were probably happy that it was transforming from not a very attractive property to a lot nicer.
So we transformed it into where we raise the kids, and where we live, and so it's the house here down the street from you is very special.
Yeah.
It's somewhere where we raise the family, we have memories. It was something that was a difficult process to get to, but it was something at the end of the day, it was extremely rewarding. And it was the very first project. That was the first project.
Here's what I've heard that is just, I think is fascinating. The experience you had with restaurants, which I think I'd always wanted to do it because I just thought, man, restaurants are cool because you put all this stuff up there and it gives you this feeling. And I think hopefully this is what's going to come out here in the next few minutes. Is it seems like that training from what I've heard is you learn the architecture and the discipline it is to build something that solves a problem for the function of that building, but you also were interested in we can call it the spiritual aspect, the feeling, the experience that you get coming in and what you see. And so, because it seems like from what I've seen of your work, that goes into the home too, which I think probably a lot of home builders are like, they got a budget, here's what everybody builds in the neighborhood, and so here's what we do. But I think what I'm going to hear is that you like to learn about the family and how do they live and what experience do they want to have, and then you take that experience training that you have to craft the architecture to not solve the structural problem of our built environment, but of the experiential aspect of it. And that's what because I love quality and thoughtfulness, and when you can tell someone spent time on a project and it has aspects to it that you go, wow, that's worthy of note. That's exceptional. I love that. So I'm going to dive into the Renee Garcia experience. Yeah. So what's your perception of what you bring to your firm, and what do you think people are attracted to? Why do they come to you? Or maybe they come to you for one reason and then you turn it, or you give them...
a lot of times clients will come to us for the architecture, and that's the main thing. We're a design build model.
They've seen your work.
Yeah, so we design it and we build it as well. But it's something that we're an architecturally led design build practice. A lot of design build groups, they may be a builder and they say, yeah, we do design build, and they have a pool of different groups that design projects for them, and then they're able to build it. We're actually very integrated in the sense that we do both in-house. So there's a lot of communication. But from an architectural perspective, it has to be right. And to get that experience is, you have to understand who's going to be living there. You have to understand who's inhabiting it. We need to know their everyday life. And a family, an individual, a couple's everyday life. Okay, it's different for each person. Okay, each person has a different life. They have different schedules throughout the day. They have different passions. They have different hobbies. They have different things that energize them and motivate them throughout the day. And there's trying to understand those things individually as well as collectively is something that I find very, very important. There's the programming aspect of design. Okay, well, I need 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The other thing is, how does light affect you? What time do you wake up? What do you do when you wake up? Those are the things that are really important to me, because then you start to design based off of how the home is oriented, how light starts to come into the home. All of those different things start to affect people. A lot of times people you buy a home and it's a home that's been there for a long time, and you try and make it yours, and through furnishings, through different things that you can do. But to be able to have that opportunity to be able to design something for somebody that's very special, that's something that is the best thing ever, to be able to do that. And then it carries on into the construction aspects of it, and it carries on into the interior furnishings as well, to make sure that it's kind of an all-encompassing thing. And the furnishings and the construction is something that we do, because I felt, at the beginning we didn't do the construction, and a lot of times you'll do a design, and there's a lot of nuances that are communicated within the design phase of a project, and schematic design and the design, and sometimes when it gets into construction, those nuances can get lost. And it's not because a builder is looking to do something or cut corners or something. It's not. It's because the builder doesn't have that knowledge of what happened on the early end. But there's those two things need to be married. I find that they need to be something that's really, really close together to understand. For example, in the construction world, you have the eyes and ears of the client on a daily basis. So you're dealing with things. There may be something that we've designed in the home to where it creates something that's dark in the evening time, because now this whole wall of glass is now reflective. Okay, and a builder that comes in may say, "Oh, you know what? There's no lights here. We need some light. So we're going to pop some lights in here."
Okay,
and then at the end of the day, whenever you do your CA visit and you're there walking the site, you're like, well, these are new. These weren't on the plant. And then, we thought we needed some light here. It felt like it needed it. And it's like, well, that was done because this. And so some things, and it wasn't done out of malice, but it was just something that was done.
Thinking, oh, wait, they forgot.
They forgot something. But there's a lot of little things like that. And so that's why I feel that whenever we do the construction of our designs, it's something that we're able to continue that experience all the way through into the very end.
Man, I really relate to that, because when we bought our house, it was really small, and we just did an addition on the back. But when people would come over, they'd go, "Wow, Chris, you're building a huge bedroom upstairs." And I go, "Nope, that's a playroom. We have 4 boys. I am building this. I am adding onto this house for me and Janie and 4 boys, not girls, boys. It's huge. There's hardly anything in it. They can throw each other against the wall. I'm fine. Their bedrooms are a little smaller because they're not going to spend much time in there. They're going to go in the playroom and jump around. So, I like that. And I think the boys loved growing up in that house because it was built for them. I mean, they had space to wrestle and do stuff. So that's what you're really doing for people. They get to live their life with the house that enhances it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. I mean, for example, we have one home that we did, that you guys did all the roof, the one over in Flower Mountain that we did the bridal bit. That one, the client, he has a wonderful kind of I want to say kind of not a routine, but he and his father get together and they enjoy a glass of scotch once a day. Not once a day, once a week. Once a week. And he wanted to have a very special room to be able to have this moment with his father. And then eventually other members of the family come in during holiday events. So this is a scotch room.
Wow.
So it's a very special part of the home.
Yeah.
It kind of cantilevers out. It sits amongst the trees, and it's something that's really special. But that is that experience for that particular client. And that's something that's I love about this, is that you get to learn so much about people.
Yeah.
And so many different their hobbies and different aspects of things.
It is, and I can tell by your facial expressions, is that where does the joy come in? The thing that knowing the people, seeing I used to tell the boys, it's a lot of work to do construction. And I said, my only reward I really need is to be at the end and just go, that looks awesome. And they go, that's it? I go, well, I want to get paid. but yeah, it's all I need. And they go, that's it. And then, then I want to do another one. But where is it? It may come in some different places for you. Where's your joy?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, there's
because you're also working with a lot of people. I mean, how big is your? How many
I
people
mean,
in
we're
the
not
office?
huge. We're like 11 people.
Okay.
So
you've got a staff.
Yeah. But we are a group that really tries to understand and cater to these things. But where the joy comes in, I mean, there's so many different parts of it that I just absolutely love. It's the part of really getting to know clients very intimately. Mm-hmm. Okay, you know their routines, you know what they love, you know what they like and what they don't like. At the end of the day, so that's something that's wonderful. But one of the things that I love the most is being able to be out there on the construction site whenever you're doing something, and having relationships with people like yourself, the subs. Okay, that is priceless. Okay, whenever you're out there and you have 20 people working on site and you're able to know all of them, and you're able to know their families, that their kids are in school, all those things, that is what it's all about, because at the end of the day, none of this is able to be possible without a collaboration. And it's all because of everybody working towards something and everybody taking pride in what they're doing.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's the guys that get forgotten, and that are laying the stone, that are pouring the concrete, that are digging the dirt, and I'll get on my soapbox for just a second, because I've done this in quite a few episodes, that we've got to teach our children. We need architects, but we need guys. We need tradesmen that know how to put that into reality, and to put the wires together and the air conditioning and all the foundation and stuff, and we're losing it.
And to care about things, that's the thing.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. Is there's a lot of people who can go out there and do something. Okay, now doing it well, that's a different story. And if you take time to communicate, and if you take time to learn about all of these people, from a personal level, understand who their kids are, understand, what their struggles are. Yeah. We all have struggles. We all have challenges on our daily basis. And if there's something that they can help me on, or I can help them on, that's what it's all about.
Oh, I've learned so many things. All you guys in the trades will love this. I'll be out on site and I'll think, well, here, let me help you guys with that. And they'll go, okay, Chris, why don't you step back, run the company, and don't do that, because here's how you do it. And you're gonna hurt yourself. Yeah. And the amazing thing is, when you do something over and over and over, you learn the way to do it, and you don't take 3 steps if you can do it in one. And you can do it well, because you just wear yourself out. So many things I learned in the field that, God, it's so cool the way you did that, and you did it better, and you did it faster. Because I'll as the boys were growing up and learning things, I thought, to be a homeowner and do a project at home, you got all the time in the world. To be a professional, you must do it faster, you must do it well, and you must do it correctly over and over and over.
That's right.
And there is an incredible skill to that, and you will learn the tool you need and the way you do it and the way all that works. I mean, really, watching a good contractor is almost like watching a singer or a dancer or an artist. They really are performing an art.
An art. It is. I mean, you look at it, somebody who's laying hardwood floors, or you look at somebody who's laying or doing steel panels correctly. That is an art form, to make sure that everything there's a knuckle joint, and then the seams are the way they need to be. It's intentional, and that's what's really, really important.
Renee, I didn't have this question here, but this is what I think is so hard about architecture these days. New products, different products, materials that may not go together. Just maybe I'm just going to throw this in there. How do you handle that as an architect, in knowing you have to study the material, you do some research on it, you make sure they go together. How does an architect these days handle the new products and materials to make sure they work?
Yeah, I mean, there's, and I look to not only what we learn from materials, as far as literature that they have on it, but Ken and I have worked together for Ken and I have worked together for so many years. Yeah. He was actually my mentor at my first job, and now he and I have worked together for, I guess, like 30 years now, almost.
What does Ken do?
Ken is the lead architect in the firm.
Got it.
So he and I talk all day long. Okay, he and I are constantly solving design things, connections. So he and I have, we finish each other's sentences. So it's about he and I looking at a material and then looking at how can we use this material. Like I see this translucent material that I want to use for something. How do we connect that to something else? But then it's not only what you find in literature, but it's also talking to our construction team, Caesar and James and Connor and Omar Lynn, looking at them, and everybody has experiences, okay, and they may be something that we may be using. Some, Caesar or James might have used on another project or something similar to where they have something to share or something to add to it. So it's about trying to find out how do these materials work, and then understanding, okay, well, if we're going to use this material, how is it going to expand and contract during different weathers? How is it going to work in exterior wise? And there's so many different new materials that are coming out that you want to try and use, and see, but you have to be very careful and very selective about where you put some of these materials, because they have to go through a lifespan.
Yes. Yeah, this isn't an art piece that's going to be in an air-conditioned space, going to be over here, and nobody's going to touch it. Yeah, it's getting used, and people, we're talking about building Dallas. Buildings move. They move a lot. And then some things don't move as much. Some things move more. And are they going to tear each other apart? I mean, we just in the roofing space that we're in, when you start getting into flat roofs, man, how you build that sandwich is the TPO
and its proper slope. And we're always challenging, like you guys, like we'll be like, okay, well, I want this to be like this, but I need this to be like that. And you're like, well, I don't know if that material is going to, we have to have certain slope. Well, how much, we're always trying to push to see how much can we get. Okay. Yeah. Well, the cut sheet says we can go 1/8 of an inch slope. Okay. Well, can we go 1/8 of an inch? Yeah, but right. I'd rather have a 1/4 inch. So,
And the things that I think are interesting. So you were really talking about custom stuff. Yeah. If you got a very minimal slope or a little bit more slope on a flat roof, but you look at, so now you got to kind of look up and go, we got tree coverage like crazy up here. No, let's go a little bit steeper, because we know over time we're going to have so much maintenance on this. We're going to have so much debris falling on this. All that. So that comes back to the site.
Right.
Every site you're going to is, I don't care if it's the next door neighbor. The site's a little different. Yeah.
And every fortunately or unfortunately, most of our sites are extremely challenging. Okay, that we build, that we typically, most of our projects are on very challenging sites, not flat sites. I love very challenging sites. You have a huge opportunity to do something very interesting from an architectural design perspective, to where you can have different levels, different entrances, different experiences, ceiling heights, different. It expands and contracts your experience as you start to go in through different spaces. And that's something that's wonderful. But the site has a huge part of, how the light's how the light's gonna come into the site. All of those things are so important. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So do you have a favorite project or a favorite challenge that's come up in your career?
They're all like children. Okay. Every project is like a child.
That. They're all like
they're all different.
Little children.
They're all different. They have their special moments, and their rewards and their challenges. Every single project it has a very special place in your heart. When you walk away from when you finish one, and then the owners are living it, and you're going there for an event or a party, or they're inviting you over for dinner or something. That's when you really get to experience what the house is like.
Yeah.
Okay, because then you're there and you're seeing them, the clients in their element, in their home, living it. That's what's really wonderful. But each one of them, you kind of nestle them, you take care of them, and then they go off, and then you'll see them, and you hope that they are taken care of. That's kind of the way it is, because you'll drive by some homes, and they should we should really seal the wood siding one more, they should really do that. But you don't want to pick up the phone, because that's not your place. It's like calling your child and saying what they should do. You can't do that, but but you just have to just stand back and just let it be and appreciate it. Yeah.
I've never thought, Renee, that's just giving me a picture. It's just like a family, and you're driving by and you're seeing your kids, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, they should really do this. Yeah.
I'll just stand back. I won't hover. I won't helicopter.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Have there been, or what have been because I know there has been, what have been some of the challenges you've had to overcome? And I'm just going to leave it broad like that. I mean, just because people are listening to this and they're going, okay, man, I think I might like to do that. Let's, kind of open the book really wide and go, okay, here's some of the things that you face day to day that are not easy to do.
No, well, you look at this, and the homes that we design, they're challenging. Okay, in their own sense, as far as how materials come together, how details get worked out. But you're looking at it, and it's kind of that micro and macro kind of situation where you're looking at something, and from a design perspective, you first start out with the site, and you start, how is the home going to sit so that it engages? You have a lot of code issues that you're needing to understand.
So you've got restrictions
right
off the bat.
Which are great. I mean, I love restrictions.
Right.
And sometimes restrictions, you have to have a resistance. You have to have something, to be able to cause you to do something else, a reaction. Okay. And so those restrictions are great. They can be frustrating at times, but they're great. Okay, they're there for a reason. And so you have this, and whenever you're designing it, you're looking at a big picture. Okay, how are spaces coming together? How are rooms coming together? And then you start coming closer and closer and closer. And then whenever you get out there and you're designing some pieces, whenever you get out into the field, and we have periodic meetings with our construction guys, that are our project managers out on the field who are running our construction projects. And there's always they pick up the phone and say, hey, we have these two materials. Okay, so you're always having to problem solve. How does something from an entire site all the way down to 1/8 of an inch? That's your spectrum of how you start to work on a daily basis. Sometimes you're doing this all day long, and you're trying to solve something that's connecting something very, very small, and then you're looking at something much bigger. And sometimes it can be a little exhausting, because your mind is constantly going between these two different scales.
Yeah.
But the devil is in the details. It's about how materials come together. Are they on the same plane? If they're not, how are we solving for this? Is there a reveal where there's two materials coming together so that you distinguish one between the other? Or is there a third material that blends them together? Right. And those things, those are the challenging things that I find every day. But those are challenges, but they're also so much fun. If everything got built so easily, then it wouldn't be that fun.
Well, who knows what people think of architecture? Because, when I got started, I was like, what I loved about it was the professor would give us a problem, and it's really a blank page.
Yeah.
I mean, and some of them were theoretical, but you've in and this is one of the things I didn't like about the education of architecture. Some of the guys that did the greatest projects, I'd go, well, we did a program and it had a budget and it had this, that, and the other. And then the guy that did the great design, who was a great designer, would go, I don't care. I wanted to build that. And the professors would go, we love it. I'm like, wait a second. I was in budget on mine. That's why mine doesn't look as good as his does. But, so to take, what I'm hearing you say is, you've got to be able to take the extreme freedom that you have as an architect to take a blank page and put whatever you want to on it. But in real life, there are restrictions. And if you can't live within those restrictions, it doesn't really become reality, does it?
No. Yeah, no, because it's there's a lot of restrictions. You have budget. You have budget restrictions.
And I like the way you said they help, probably help focus you on. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is what I got to do.
Otherwise, it's like painting something on a canvas that's this big. Okay, okay. I understand my parameters.
Right.
But if somebody says you have your canvas can be any size you want, well, then it's like, oh my God, where do I start?
What do I do?
Where do I do? So these parameters are wonderful to have it in place, I feel. Because and you have so many different ones. You have budget, you have clients' restrictions, clients' needs, codes, different things that are city requirements, life safety requirements. So many different things that you have to take into consideration to make sure that everything is working in harmony. And at the end of the day, you hope that everything just kind of works nicely.
Who are the people that have either inspired you, helped you, or currently major effects in your life, in your business?
Who inspired me and affected me? I think that, you look at architecture as a whole. I think the person who inspired me the most was the Dean of Architecture at UTA. I think his name was Richard Ferrier, and that was also the class that I met Amber in. It was his class, and during that semester, he asked me to work at his firm. He was the dean while I was in school, so I worked at his firm. Yeah. So I did that, but it was one of those things where whenever you get outside of the context of school, and you're sitting in a professor's living room, okay, and you're working, because his office was at his home, and whenever you're sitting in there and you're getting to know some of these people who are kind of your thought leaders, and they're teaching you stuff, and whenever you get them outside of that context and you get them more on a personal level, you're able to learn a few more things. You always have doubts as you're growing up. You always have doubts on what you can do as from a design, and I see so many people in school that are great. You see so many people who are professionals that are doing this, and they're wonderful, friends.
Architecture can be really intimidating.
It can be.
Guys that are just incredible designers. You go, that is a God-given gift. How do they do that? That's what I was not a great designer. Well, I was more of a practical.
And that's the thing. That's something he instilled me to want to push harder, and that was something that I really thank him for. The other thing, in this profession, of design, architecture, construction, interiors, there's so many different facets of it. A lot of times people think, well, to do this, I have to be great at this. No, there's people who are great designers who are doing this. There are people who are not great designers, but are amazing planners. There's a place for everybody. Not all of us have the same mindset and the skill set. But like numbers for me, I understand them. At running a business and all that, but I do know that there are people in place in our company that are there for a reason to understand those numbers. And my role is something else, okay? But we all work towards something, and that is to do something for our clients. Yeah. And so we're all working towards. So we all have our skill sets, but we all kind of work in conjunction with each other, and it's a very collaborative approach. I'm not, and nobody in the company is one of those people that are like, well, it's got to be this way. If it's not this way, because you see a lot of designers and that are like, if you don't like it like this, well, then go hire somebody else. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the idea that they have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely different. You learn from so many different people. I can learn from somebody who's laying stone.
You actually listen to your clients?
Yeah.
What?
No, but I can learn from the clients. I can learn from who's laying the stone outside. There's so many different people that can teach you so many different things, and it only helps you for that next project. The way we do work is to really understand who the clients are. If you look at our portfolio of work, it's not all modern architecture. It's, we have some that are traditional, transitional with modern touches to it. And that's something that the philosophy is really blending the natural surroundings with what's going on with their everyday life. Now, the architectural vernacular can change, okay? And that's what I really find challenging. If a client comes and says, I've wanted to have a home that's this particular style, but I see that maybe you haven't done that before. I look at that as an opportunity, as a challenge. Okay, well, how can we look at this differently? How can we look at an architectural style differently and transform that into something that may have some modern touches, different lights come into it in different ways?
Here's something I saw of yours in our neighborhood. We'd done, I think the first few projects we did for you were all modern.
All modern,
which
yes.
kind of mean. They had flat roofs, and they were more angular. And then someone said that, Renee's designing that. And I go, no, it's got a pitched roof on it. There's no way. They go, no, he did. I go, what? Renee put a slope on the top of a house. Like my mind was blown.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The flat roofs are much easier. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh.
But it's true. I mean, the architectural vernacular can change. And that's something that's real wonderful, to be able to do that. But that's because it's not, if you don't like this, then go find somebody else. Me, it's like I appreciate the challenge, and I appreciate working with different people.
This question isn't even on my page, but I got to ask you this. Even the house with the pitched roof on it, I think this is interesting about architects. I can see like when you say these are your children, I see the Gracia. People say, "Oh, that's their family." You can tell their family. That's their kid. That's their kid. They're different, but I see the family resemblance there.
Yeah,
I see your fingerprint on all your designs. I mean, even on that one, once I stand back and look at it, I go, okay, I see Renee. I see you in there. Well, but
and there's always a flat roof in there.
No. Oh, well, there was one on the back, but anyway, but it wasn't prominent. But maybe a comment on that. You do everything for your clients custom to what they want, but there's still your fingerprint on there. I see you. You have an affinity for certain materials. How do you? I'll tell you. Here's my question: how do you incorporate that and still make it real specific for the client, but it still has your fingerprint on it?
Yeah, and that's something that whenever
that's a real nuanced thing, though, because I mean, unless somebody knows you, if they do know you, they can look at your projects and go, yeah.
You can see some resemblance. You can see a little bit of resemblance.
Yeah,
and whenever Ken and I are working on the design of projects and we're going back and forth on different things, there's a rhythm and there's a math to kind of things. Some of it is some of it's intuitive, like you don't know why, and some of it is you're trying, but there's certain things like as far as parapet heights, roofs, eaves, distances that eaves are, there's a certain rhythm that I like. That I feel that there's a balance between it. As far as proportions between solid and voids, as far as glass and heavier materials, lighter materials, there needs to be a certain balance. It's you're out there painting, and it carries on into other things. We work with, then you get into the landscape architecture. We work with a wide variety of different landscape groups and architects that we've done. And some of them you'll see out there. I remember one project, David Ralston we were working on with him. And one thing that I really liked about him was, you have a plan, but he was out there and he'd be moving this tree from here and moving it to this place and moving this bush from over here. So you could see it was like as if, you're painting, creating art, right there at the moment. And that's something that I really like. And when you look at construction, it's a little bit slower than that, but you're still doing that. You're still doing, sealing, okay, how's the fascia coming in? All of these different materials, and then how do you adjust this? Oh, this is off. Why is it off? Because of this particular rhythm that we have, And so it's, you can look at some of the projects and you can kind of see some of the similarities. Yeah.
Okay. And to kind of wrap up today, Renee, this has been so much fun. I just love getting to know the people that come on to our podcast. I think I know you better now. I know where you came from. What advice? And I think this is a real important part of our podcast. What can you leave? Either someone who's older who wants to get into the building architecture realm, or someone who's just thinking about it, or even a youngster that you go, this would be my advice, or here's what I've enjoyed about it, and here's what I think you could, experience in your journey through architecture.
Yeah, I mean, there's, as I was saying before, there's so many different facets of this industry that you can do, whether it's building materials, whether it's design, whether it's management, whether it's financial aspects of that deal with construction or with architecture. Those are the things. That's what's really important. I can speak to the design aspect of it because that's my passion is the design, and I was inspired at an early age that I wanted to do this for my elementary school. And it's all about the environment that you're in. Okay, so I went to a
Was
school.
there a person?
No, it wasn't a person. It was the entire school was the space that made me want to do what I do. And I went to a school in Irving. It was Townley Elementary. I don't know who designed it. Don't know anything about that. But this school... we were the first class to be in this school. Okay, so
it was a brand new building?
Brand new building. And the school itself had as soon as you walked through the door, it had a bridge that you could cross over. It had a waterfall. It had birds in in these cages. You could hear birds. It was this amazing environment as a child to be able to be in.
That sounds like an awesome school.
It was, and I've never seen another school like it, But that school is something that transformed everything. And it was that school, and also one of my friend's houses. She's an interior designer in New York now. Her name was Joanna, and I used to go over to her house to play when I was a little kid. I was probably, 5 years old, and we would play Superman, Wonder Woman or something. And her house was all these different levels and different slopes and different things. And I remember the staircase. And being in different levels and experiencing trees and experiencing tops of trees and canopies of trees and different things, that's something that for me was just a huge inspiration. So, I mean, I think that there's lots of different aspects of this business that people can find very interesting. From a design perspective, you have to find the beauty and the passion in everything, whether it's a shirt and the stitching is a different color than the material. That's all how these different things come together. That's something that's a passion to me, and carries on into materials and furniture and different things like that.
And so somebody who would want to get into this, what would be some practical things that they could do to be better at the craft? I mean, because this is a discipline. You had to learn a lot of things. I mean, you're saying, hey, this was fun when I was a kid. And that inspired me. But then you had to learn how to do this. What's your advice on it?
You have to learn and understand spatial relationships, okay? And be able to visually experience things in the imaginary world, kind of whenever you put it on paper, like, what's this going to be like, these lines, whenever I
and
walk
probably
through there.
not be afraid to experiment.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing, is there's different scales. You can change the perception that you have within the space by scale. You could have something that's very narrow that comes in, something that's very tall, and it's going to change your perspective of that particular space versus something that's very wide and open. And that is the thing within design, is you want to do that. You want to have that push and pull, as you get into different, and it starts to define different spaces of public and private spaces between different things that you can do, to where now the scale down this hallway, the scale is going to be different than everything else.
You know what I'm hearing you say is, as someone who might want to get into this, see if this jazzes you as you're in built environments, even if you're outdoors. Be conscious of what this space makes you feel like.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it sounds like that's what you do. You've got this bank of knowledge of this tall, skinny, this open, this bright. This made me feel, this made me want to, and you were very conscious of what that did, and that you go back into that memory and think, oh, my client wants to have this. I know what that does. I know how I've felt that. Then you probably get with your clients and say, maybe paint the picture.
Exactly.
Would this be something cool for you? And I can see you seeing them, their eyes light up, and you go, "Oh, I hit it." Okay.
No, yeah.
I hit it.
And you said something very important. It's not only in a space, but it's also outdoor space. Look at what canopies, trees do, landscape walls, hedges, different kinds of things. They start to create those moments for you. And that's, as if there are children out there who feel and can basically experience some of these elements, then that's something that they may be a little bit more focused towards design.
Yeah.
And encouraging that. I mean, there's so many different things now with the kids. I mean, whenever I was younger, I had, Legos, and I'd build stuff with Legos. Now kids have Sims on their computer, and they're able to build little things or Minecraft is wonderful because they're able to build different environments and different worlds, and it's all about using your imagination at the end of the day.
I think the technology that we have right now compared to what I had in the 70s is not fair. It is not fair. Our number 3 son is a landscape architect, and he does designs that I would spend weeks putting together, cardboard and glue. And he just goes, well, look, Dad, I've got this presentation where I can put on the computer. You can put your headphones on. I've got music in it, and then I press play, and you can walk through it. And I'm like, I could have never done that. Now, that is a thing in architecture that is so incredible. The presentation of it.
Yeah, the presentation.
Do y'all work with that kind of
sometimes,
video?
And that's really important, the 3-dimensional and the renderings and everything. That's really important.
That stuff's incredible.
Because it helps, but you have to be able to communicate the vision to somebody, to a client. And you can do that either through renderings, but most importantly, you also have to be able to communicate that.
Yeah. Okay,
through drawings and through communication and telling a story and those things. Because you have to paint a picture. At the end of the day, we're all trying to create art, and and how you get that from it. What do you take away from it?
It's our built environment, but it really is art. But it's something that it's like one of my professors at Tech had designed a sculpture, and he loved the sculpture so much he wanted to live in it. And so he went out to Lake Ransom Canyon and built a life-size sculpture that he may still be building, and I don't know. He was building it by himself, and it was all out of steel. He built his own crane and everything. But Renee, it sounds like what you've brought to Dallas is art that people get to live in, that they enjoy, and it's where they live every day, and they're not just living in a home that they built for resale down the road. It's a place where, like you were saying, your house, where your kids grew up, all the memories of your life, so much of our life is lived at home, and that's what we cherish. Those are the memories that we cherish.
Exactly. Yeah, that's at the end of the day. That's what's important, is when you can look back and your kids can look back.
Yeah.
Or your family and say, oh, well, I remember when I was younger and I did that,
Yeah.
So.
I've thoroughly enjoyed visiting with Renee Garcia and his Building Dallas place, and that he is providing places for people to live that they truly, truly enjoy, not just Dallas, but their home and their own space. And so we will see you later on another episode of Building Dallas.
Thanks for tuning in to Building Dallas, where we bring the stories that shape North Texas. Subscribe, share, and stay connected. Until next time, keep building. Building Dallas is presented by Arrington Roofing, keeping North Texas covered, rain or shine.